Hello folks, and welcome to my second G&B survey. This time the survey got over 2,400 responses, triple that of last time, so thank you to everyone who responded. A short disclaimer. It is important to remember that I got a significant number of my responses using the help of my pals 242 and Tristan Noof, the former almost certainly having a more experienced audience. Without further ado, I'll briefly go over each question and my thoughts on each. Overwhelmingly, people loved this update, almost 60% of responses being a full 5 out of 5. Funnily, 13 whole people gave 1 out of 5, not at all enjoyed. There's simply nothing like y'all. Personally, I've adored the style and polish of the new update, even if certain aspects aren't perfect. Ah yes, the playtime question returns. This time, I didn't add an other section, so there wasn't a million slightly different and overly specific responses. While certainly somewhat skewed by the audience of 242 and Tristan Noof, about 65% of players responding had less than 400 hours, just under 7% with more than 1,000, and 3.3% with over 2,000 hours, like myself. This mostly serves to contextualize later responses for you, the audience, with how they were skewed by what I assume is a somewhat more experienced pool of responses. 53% of respondents answered they'll play whatever their team needs, which is nice, but aside from those, the winning category was of course line in officer. Yeah, officer, beating out infantry by 5% of responses. Of course, I assume that a good number of that other 53% usually ends up on infantry, but this was definitely somewhat surprising. Most of the other classes were small, fragmented percents, the smallest being chaplain naturally, but I do chalk that partially up to them being support classes, mostly played by those who play what their team needs, and yes, that does include seamen. Very tight race between the top 3 contenders, France, Britain, and Prussia. The French beat out the British by 1 response, with the Prussians behind both of them by about 30 votes. In 4th and 5th were the Americans and Austrians respectively. Personally, I like the Austrians the best. The average opinion seems to be about a 4 out of 5. I pretty much wholeheartedly agree. I think certain aspects of G&B are heavily unbalanced, but for the most part, everything's quite balanced. The responses to this question corroborate the formers. Most things in this game are balanced, but there is a notable exception. Plenty of notable exceptions, really, but I think we all know what specifically. The more medium option was chosen for this question, almost 50% responses for most classes being useful, but some being a bit more important usually. Then in second place at 40%, every class is balanced. I think this is mostly accurate. Musician is generally boring, and Sapper, at least in my opinion, has issues. Again though, mostly fine. Plus, Chaplain got the exorcism buffs this update, which are pretty dang sweet. This really enforced my previous view of San Sebastian. It's not a bad map by any means. I love it myself. It's just so dang overvoted. It makes it sort of feel repetitive to many of these responders, I think. If it were less common in the map pool, I think it'd be nice, or something like that. It kind of pushes other maps out of the way just for this map that everybody's played. Since there was no survey for version 15, I included this question. The most common answer, with 33%, was that it's a pretty decent experience, which I agree with. Second, at 25%, was it's alright, which I don't think is unreasonable to feel about how lengthy it can be. 23% said it's a great map, and that they really enjoy it. I think if the developers ever revisited St. Petersburg, I would want them to cut the more redundant waves like 9, 3, 5, and maybe even 7. I think the length is really what gets people about St. Petersburg. Since this was a free response, most of the responses from what I can tell were weapons like the brass pistol, horse artillery pistol, and so on. So rather than read through all those simple and happy responses about how much they love their favorite weapons, I'll share a few highlights. My favorite weapon, as of the London update, is probably the hand mortar. It's just really fun to use, and seeing the bodies get the grenades stuck in them is always cool. 70% responded, hell yeah, and that is pretty accurate in all honesty. To all the 5% who responded, no lol, I think you're a little 4KDR chud. Opinions on this dude are quite mixed, which I suppose is understandable overall, though 25% voted less than 4, more towards dislike than like, and 55% voted more than 4. I think it's a pretty awesome segment, but I assume that most less than positive responses were concerned with not having a surgeon and the consistently high rate of fire of the sharpshooter. If I personally were to make a change, if I got the chance to, I would make the longer cooldown between shots if he's fired too many times in quick succession more pronounced. It kind of feels like it's the same amount even though it's like a second slower. 35% of respondents find Endless enjoyable, but not their favorite mode. 33% responded that they don't particularly care for it, but it's fine. 18% found that they don't like it, but it's not awful or anything. Only 7% of respondents stated that they outright disliked Endless. I wholeheartedly believe that a significant number of those who don't care for Endless are simply disinterested due to the lack of maps. We haven't gotten a new Endless since version 10, the Berezina update, over 18 months ago. And in that time, we lost Vardahu Endless, too. I love that map. I think getting new Endless maps as well as Vardahu Endless again would significantly improve the popularity of the mode. The dissenters of Endless definitely seem like a vocal minority type of thing. I could say a little bit more, but at a certain point, I've said it a million times. Since the London update literally came out about a week ago, naturally Westminster won by a huge 30%. This recency bias is something we saw in the first survey, with Roscoff winning easily. Roscoff held on quite well, though. San Sebastian was down to 5.3% of the vote, less than Leipzig, which really confirms question 8's results. 53% of respondents usually enjoy the Spontoon. I was surprised by how low this portion was in comparison to the Cuirass. It does make sense given that the Spontoon is much more situational than the default Officer Saber, but I really do think that more people should enjoy it, even though I personally think it could be improved. I was very shocked that 70% of respondents enjoy using the Cuirass often. I personally find it middling to use with a variety of reloadouts that could have been cool, but just aren't, and I don't think calling it a crutch would be entirely inaccurate. I think that the hand motor is super fun, but I can understand why almost as many people voted that it depends as they usually enjoy it. Nothing much else to say, it's just a neat item with how fun it is, even if it's not as effective. I think this thing is total garbage, and it really needs a large change to make it worth using, despite the rifle itself being decent now. I guess it's okay for the more casual player, hence the 47% yes responses, but it was such a missed opportunity in my opinion. I don't have anything really interesting that got responded here from what I've seen, even though I tried to read fairly thoroughly. Just a variety of have a nice days and other small nitpicks of the game. I do appreciate the people that said have a nice day and thank you for making this survey though. Really, it means a lot. Some responses here were very much just I like this weapon, which was kind of the entire point of the favorite weapon question, but I digress. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for future surveys, please. I plan on doing one for the next update with a larger amount of questions, but thank you for all the support that I've gotten with this one. I really appreciate it. And of course, I must sincerely thank, although I mentioned them earlier, Tristan Oof and 2for2 for community posting the link to the survey to make it more widespread, because it really helped. I'd also like to thank New Henry, who helped me by posting the survey in his Discord server.
Die, you filth!